Hello and thanks for tuning into the show that goes around the continent to bring you stories from near and far. I'm Olumide Macaulay at Channels Television here in Lagos. I'm joined by Vincent McCory from the Voice of America in Washington.
Thanks, I'm Vincent McCory at the Voice of America. Happy to be with you again for another edition of Africa 54. Let's start off with the latest from Nigeria. Channels Television in Lagos brings you that story.
Nigeria has launched its development plan for the next 5 years, 2021 to 2025. This is to guide government policy, programs and projects, as well as private sector operations towards achieving the country's Agenda 2050. This successor plan is expected to lift 100 million Nigerians from poverty within the next 10 years.
Last week, the National Development Plan 2021 to 2025 was formally presented to the public by President Muhammadu Buhari just before the penultimate Federal Executive Council meeting of the year. The plan, which succeeds the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, is considered an all-encompassing agenda meant to increase per capita income, even distribution of income, reduce unemployment, increase the supply of manpower, diversify the economy, and ensure balanced development. The objectives are drawn from the lessons learned during the implementation of the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan 2017 to 2020, as the government hopes to mobilize resources worth 348 trillion naira involving subnationals and the private sector.
Regardless of whatever government comes into power after this present administration, the government will still be seeking to continue to strengthen the diversification of the Nigerian economy. And that's one of the major objectives of the plan. We sought to provide a strong foundation for a concentric, diversified economy. Why concentric, diversified? Because already the Nigerian economy is diversified. It's truly diversified. But we want to deepen that diversification. So any government that comes must be doing that.
The plan is structured around 6 concepts: economic growth and development, infrastructure, public administration, human capital development, social development, and regional development. The Minister of Works and Housing speaks on how the plan will impact the energy and transportation sectors.
At our last ministerial retreat, we were having conversations around our ministerial mandates. One of them is energy sufficiency and energy security. The other one is transport infrastructure. Of course, these two are linked. If the transport infrastructure is not sufficient or reliable, the energy and the petrol and petroleum product distribution network becomes vulnerable.
Previous years have seen government come up with plans such as the Economic Recovery Plan 2017 to 2020 and the Vision 2020. However, none of them were fully implemented, thus raising questions on the sustainability of the new plan.
Joining us to discuss this is an economist and managing director, Cowrie Asset Limited, Mr. Johnson Chukwu. Glad to have you on Africa 54.
Thank you for having me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Do you see this latest development plan as being feasible?
Well, I would say yes, with a but. Yes, with a condition in the sense that the ability of the government to execute the National Development Plan will depend on the policies that which support the execution of those plans. The government has said in that plan that they are going to create an enabling environment for private sector to invest in the economy, but they're also going to be a participant in economic activities. So how they're going to be a participant in economic activity will be a critical factor. The policies that will be enunciated that will encourage private sector investment into the economy are the critical factor that will determine whether the plan will be successful or not. But whether it's executable, yes. How it will be, whether it will be executed is now dependent on a couple of other factors.
Now, previous years have seen the governments come up with similar plans such as the Vision 2020, as well as the Economic Recovery Plan of 2017. Can this plan be sustained within the stipulated period?
Well, the government has set a plan for 2021 to 2025, which is really a 4-year plan. And interestingly, this year, 2022 is going to be a pre-election year, and 2023 is going to be an election year. So a new government will come into power in 2023, and that new government will be responsible for part execution of the plan. So two things are critical. One, what happens in the first 2 years of the plan, which is 2022 and 2023. And unfortunately, those 2 years will be dominated by political activities and political considerations. Then what will happen subsequent to that will depend on the government that comes into power. So whether we can fully achieve the targets, the lofty targets of that 2021 to 2025 National Development Plan will be dependent on all these factors I've mentioned. What the current government is able to do in the next 3 years, and if the new government buys completely into the vision of the 2021-2025 plan and is ready to run with the policies of the current government. So it's going to be a tall order to execute the entirety of this plan within this time because of these limiting factors, political activities, and the transition. And the new government will now take some time to settle in, appoint ministers, and get a hang on governance, and then hopefully drive the National Development Plan.
We hope those factors you mentioned will be well considered. But now, what impact do you think this plan will have on the country's economy?
Well, interestingly, if the plan succeeds, it should have a very massive impact on the economy. We should see the economy grow beyond about $500 billion GDP size, so possibly doubling that size. Because I've always said that the economy of Nigeria is an economy that has no mature sector. And that means that every sector is laden with opportunities. So once the government creates the enabling environment, creates the policy environment, incentivizes the private sector, and does its own role of providing security, providing appropriate regulatory environment, I would expect that one, we're going to see a massive increase in the GDP, we're going to see a massive increase in productive activities, we're going to see a drastic reduction in unemployment, and possibly an improvement in the standard of living of average Nigerians.
Thank you so much for your observations on the matter. Managing Director of Asset Carry Limited and economist Mr. Johnson Chukwu, thank you for coming on Africa 54.
My pleasure.
As the new year begins, we take a look into the ancient past. Scientists in South Africa have discovered the first partial Homo Naledi child skull in one of the world's richest hominid fossil sites. The discovery at a UNESCO World Heritage Site near Johannesburg, called the Cradle of Humankind, reveals that the non-human species performed rituals for their dead thousands of years ago, before any evidence that humans did. For VOA, Marise D. Clark visited the site and has this report.
We've got you descending at 1 minute to 11. Good luck.
For paleoanthropologist Lee Berger and his team searching for Homo Naledi fossils, a normal day means contorting themselves through a maze of narrow cracks and holes 30 meters underground. It was on a remote limestone shelf in the Rising Star Cave where they found a partial Homo Naledi child's skull. Consisting of 28 fragments and 6 teeth, the find is being called fossil Leti, short for the Tswana word Letimela, meaning the lost one. Leti was discovered 12 meters beyond the Dinaledi chamber, where the first fossils belonging to the previously unknown Homo Naledi species were found in 2013. Berger says Leti's solitary location is significant.
She wasn't dragged in there by a scavenger or carnivore. There are no marks of that on her bones. We know she wasn't washed in there. We can see that from the sediments. We know she didn't crawl in there because the rest of her body, which would be much stronger than these parts, isn't there.
Berger surmised one of the other Homo Naledi moved Leti to that inaccessible shelf. Leti's discovery in 2017 was only recently revealed. Based on its teeth, scientists determined Leti died between the ages of 4 and 6. Her remains are believed to be as old as other recovered Homo Naledi fossils, says Rising Star Expedition geologist Tebogo Makubela.
Because of the similarity of the geology with the same sediments and the same deposition or preservation style, we believe that it is the same time period of 241,000 to 335,000 years old.
Letty will soon be included with the other Homo Naledi fragments of over 20 individuals, along with the world-famous Tahung child and Littlefoot, the most complete hominid fossil found so far, in this vault at South Africa's Wits University. Marise de Klerk, VOA News, Johannesburg, South Africa.
In early 2020, a team of scientists from the University of Vermont, Tufts University and Harvard University took stem cells from African clawed frogs' embryos and turned them into tiny living robots. As if that isn't amazing enough, then something unexpected happened. Maxim Mostlakov has the story.
In March 2020, scientists from 3 large universities, Tufts, Harvard and the University of Vermont, created a unique organism in a lab setting, a tiny living robot called Xenobot. But unlike the average mechanical creation, Xenobots were produced from stem cells taken from African clawed frog embryos. Professor Michael Levine is one of the Xenobot creators.
So what we did was we took skin cells off of an early frog embryo. These are completely normal skin cells. There was no genomic editing, no transgenes, no CRISPR, nothing like that. And we took these cells off of the early frog embryo and we set them aside in a new environment, and we sort of liberated them from the instructions that they normally get from their neighbors in the embryo. And we gave them a chance to do something completely different.
The tiny living robots were programmed to behave in a certain way. They could move around, self-organize and transport small weights, as well as work together as a group. Levine says that by creating Xenobots, he tried to answer the question of how cells unite in order to create functional structures.
And it turns out that what they like to do is to cooperate together to build something we call a Xenobot. This is very important because if we learn how to communicate with these cells and push them to build the structures that we need, we could resolve many problems in regenerative medicine. So you could ask them to build new organs, to regenerate limbs, to reprogram tumors.
The Xenobots are truly tiny. Their size is no bigger than 1 millimeter. They have no neurons, nor do they have reproductive, digestive or other systems. They organically break down and fall apart within 2 weeks. Scientists also learned recently that these tiny robots spontaneously reproduce in a new way.
We found that under just the right conditions, Xenobots are capable of a previously unknown 10th way of replicating. And this 10th form of replication is quite different from the 9 naturally occurring forms of replication. It's kinematic or movement-based rather than growth-based, but the result is the same.
The team says they can manage the replication process. Using a special algorithm, scientists created a Xenobot that looks like Pac-Man, the famous video game character. The parent Xenobot, created with the help of artificial intelligence, can use its Pac-Man-like mouth to compress stem cells into a ball and help form them into self-copies. These children then produce their own babies, and this process goes on and on. Some may find the technology worrisome, but scientists argue there is no need for concern.
This is not a scary technology. This, compared to all of the other things that are already happening. So artificial synthetic bacteria, viruses, in fact, natural viruses, as we know, that arise all the time, genetically modified crops, all of these things are already here with us. They're in the environment.
So Xenobots are interesting because if we can get them to do useful behaviors, they would be able to do those useful behaviors, but when they're done doing their job, they would simply biodegrade for the very fact that they're made out of cells instead of plastics and metals.
Ultimately, scientists hope Xenobots can be used in reproductive medicine on a regular basis and give people a better understanding of how multicellular complex organisms arose from ancient single-celled organisms. Maxim Moskalkov for VOA News, Washington.
Festivities are still on and shopping sprees seem far-fetched for some people. In South Africa, there are people who are reaching out from the little they have to support others around them. An unemployed couple in Soweto is one of them.
This scenario plays out twice a week in this area, every week. The soup kitchen makes a difference for those who get on the queue before the tickets finish. The prevailing economic situation around the world, made worse by the COVID pandemic, has thrown up a lot of community heroes in different places who have been helping hold up fellow community members, especially those who are struggling to put even one meal on their table each day. Here in Noord-Gesik, Soweto in South Africa, this family has been raising funds and food every 2 weeks to help support the people in the area. And as you can see, the queue is usually long every time the soup kitchen is open. And this project was inspired by the woman you see painted on that wall, Betty Glover. She died about 3 years ago. She inspired the soup kitchen that you see continuing here. Donovan and Vinoda Sampson, both unemployed, live here with their children and grandchildren. It's tough for them too, but through a few donors, the soup kitchen feeds many, old and young, every week.
It's almost 20 years that we're feeding people in Noord-Gesik like a soup kitchen, like our late Mama Betty Glover. So we're taking the legend and still doing a job for her. There's a lot of people who's very poor in Noord-Gesik, and we're thinking on those ones that we try to help, try our best to give them something just to eat for the day. Like for instance, the packet we made up. The packet is made up for almost say 2 days, because we give them stamp first, we give them milli meal, and we give them soya. So it's 1, 2, and then we give them porridge, like a porridge that they can give the children in the morning. So that's how we try to bless them with it.
They say the queues have grown longer with the COVID pandemic, but their donors list has grown shorter. The number of tickets issued every day gives a picture of how many people they can cater for on that day. In no time, the pots are empty. They say it's heartbreaking sometimes having to turn some people away, but they have financial constraints. We asked Vinoda why they have continued despite the difficulties.
The help of other people. That's how we are getting things here in the house also. And we've got like a brass band, and we are keeping the children out of the streets from drugs and from all the funny things they're doing here in the streets, so we're keeping them away.
Vinoda also hopes more community members across the world would do more for the youths among them, to get them off the streets and meaningfully engaged. This way, she says, communities will be safer and better. From Noord-Gesik, Soweto, South Africa, Betty Dibia, Channels Television News.
To make Black history more accessible, an Oakland, California man designed his own augmented reality app, and it's now being shared with students in Tanzania. Matt Dibble has the story.
This mural honors 2 leaders of the Black Panther Party, the revolutionary group founded here in Oakland, California, over a half-century ago.
That's pretty cool.
The painting by Timothy B. makes a strong statement, but point a smartphone at the wall and it literally speaks.
The only next thing to do is get organized. Get organized.
Damian McDuffie brought the mural to life using AR, Augmented Reality technology.
What I've built is Black Terminus AR. It's an augmented reality platform for Black art and the Black Cultural Archive.
McDuffie is a writer and historian who says he wants to make history more accessible. He used downtime during the pandemic to teach himself AR and create a free app for others to use.
The camera is using computer vision. They see a target, and then I and my tech tells the target what to do. So when you see this image, play this video.
McDuffie has activated sites important to Black Panther history around Oakland. And that's just the beginning. He is helping others launch their own AR projects, like this one, with students in Tanzania. His website has tools that make it possible for anyone to make their own AR artwork, he says.
My dream is to have these, archival photos of people in different neighborhoods, like all over. You might be able to open up a photo of your grandparent and kind of showcase what they were doing.
The power is with the people.
Matt Dibble for VOA News, Oakland, California.
Well, and that's our show for today. You can find all the continent's top news and world news online at voaafrica.com. Check it out. I'm Vincent McCory in Washington. Channels Television has our last word from Lagos.
We look forward to bringing you another show next week. ChannelsTV.com is your source for news and other programming. I'm Olumide Macaulay. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.